NBA free agency is just right around the corner, and beginning at 6 p.m. Eastern tonight, teams can now negotiate with players not on their own teams, and I'm here on the East Coast, so I want to get this video out for you guys as soon as possible. That way I can look back and react to how accurate or not accurate I was when it comes to this free agency period. And we all know NBA free agency is one of the most fun times of the year, but unfortunately, this free agent class kind of sucks. Let's just be honest. But having said all of that, let me go ahead and do a recap of the last few days. I want to talk about the players that signed an extension, the players that opted out of a player option, and also the ones that opted into their contract. If you don't want to see a recap and you just want to get straight into my actual free agency predictions, I'll leave a timestamp down below for you guys to skip to. Now, here's a list of the players that signed an extension with their teams in the last couple of days. We got Davion Mitchell, a 2-year, $24 million deal to stay with Miami. Sam Merrill, a 4-year, $38 million deal to stay with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Jalen Williams, not J-Dub, signed a 3-year, $24 million deal with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Both Julius Randle and Naz Reid are going to be staying with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Julius Randle signed a 3-year, $100 million contract, and Naz Reid a 5-year, $125 million contract extension. James Harden declined his player option but decided to renegotiate and stay with the Clippers on a 2-year, $81 million deal. Bobby Portis signed a 3-year, $44 million contract extension with the Bucks, and Jabari Smith Jr. signed a 5-year, $122 million deal with the Houston Rockets. He got a lot better this season. Obviously, the Rockets took a big step forward, and he deserves that deal. Now we're just going to wait for Paolo Banchero and Chet Holmgren to get their well-deserved money. Now, here's a list of the players that opted out of their player option. We've got Nicholas Batum opting out of his $4.9 million deal. Dorian Finney-Smith declined his $15.4 million contract with the Lakers. Duncan Robinson declined his $20 million player option with the Heat. The 76ers declined Lonnie Walker's $2.9 million team option. Eric Gordon declined his $3.4 million player option with the Sixers. Orlando declined the team options on both Mo Wagner and Caleb Houston. And DeAndre Ayton just last night had his $35.6 million contract bought out. And that's a topic that we'll get to in a little bit. And probably the biggest news in the last 48 hours in the NBA free agency world is LeBron James opting into his $52.6 million player option with the Lakers. And it's not about him opting into the contract, it's about the optics around it. LeBron James, who's going into year 23 at age 40, now kind of has the leverage to want to go out there and compete for a championship. And although I do expect him to stay with the Lakers, there's now rumors out there that potentially they could be on the move and they could request a trade from the Los Angeles Lakers. Here's what Rich Paul, LeBron James' agent, had to say after LeBron opted into his contract, and I quote, "LeBron wants to compete for a championship. He knows the Lakers are building for the future. He understands that, but he values a realistic chance of winning it all. We understand the difficulty in winning now while preparing for the future. We do want to evaluate what's best for LeBron at this stage in his life and career. He wants to make every season he has left count, and the Lakers understand that and are supportive and want what's best for him." Now, I won't go on a whole diatribe about LeBron. This video is not about LeBron, but let me just briefly say, I do expect LeBron James to stay with the Lakers, but if the Lakers don't make any significant moves in the following weeks via the trade market, via free agency, why shouldn't LeBron want to get a trade requested and potentially move elsewhere? I just made a full article about LeBron James potentially going to the Dallas Mavericks, which I think would be a terrific suitor on Fansided. If you guys don't know, I'm a contributor for Fansided. I will link to that in the description down below so you guys can go ahead and check that out and hear my full thoughts about LeBron James. And the last two deals that I want to talk about before I get into my actual free agency prediction is going to be with the Utah Jazz yesterday afternoon, trading Colin Sexton and a second-round pick to the Charlotte Hornets in exchange for center Jusuf Nurkic. Now, both of these players, Nurkic and Sexton, are essentially on matching salaries, about $19 million. Both are on expiring contracts. But I don't understand this move for Utah. In the next couple of days, we'll say a lot about if they potentially move Walker Kessler, which would be a terrible idea, and what the Jazz are trying to do. Because I understand that they needed to get some kind of value out of Colin Sexton, but the fact of the matter is they got negative value for Colin Sexton, and they now get a backup big for Walker Kessler. But the whole point of having Kyle Filipowski is having a backup big for Walker Kessler. This trade made little to no sense for me. I understand that the backcourt is crowded in Utah with Keontae George, Walker Kessler, and Isaiah Collier. but Utah had to get off of this trade. Colin Sexton clearly had negative trade value, and I thought that this was a lose trade for Utah. It was a win trade for the Hornets, who now have a very solid young core with Charles Lee manning the squad with Colin Sexton, LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, Con Kneppel, Brandon Miller, you name it. The Hornets got a dog. Utah lost this trade. Now, the last player that I want to talk about before the free agency predictions is going to be with Detroit Pistons, or what I think is Detroit Pistons guard, Malik Beasley, who was about to sign a 3-year, $42 million contract extension with the Detroit Pistons. He's obviously one of the best snipers in the game, but now he's being investigated by the United States District Attorney's Office on allegations of gambling on the games, and there has been a lot of smokescreen out there. There's been a lot of really incriminating evidence out there based on Malik Beasley's performances, and I don't want to say that he did it. I think he's innocent until proven guilty, and I don't want to make any assumptions, but man, Malik Beasley, if it's true, this is just ruining the game of basketball. Gambling might be ruining the game of basketball, and I hope that, the rumors aren't true. Now, after all of that rambling, let's go ahead and actually talk about this year's free agency class. I'm going to list out the best 15 free agents from this class, no particular order, and then I'll actually tell you where I think all of these guys are going to land. So we've got Miles Turner, Jonathan Kuminga, Josh Giddey, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, DeAndre Ayton, Dorian Finney-Smith, Malik Beasley, potentially, Ty Jerome, Brook Lopez, Al Horford, Quentin Grimes, Cam Thomas, who's a restricted free agent, Tyus Jones, Karis LeVert, and Dennis Schroeder. Now, for the top free agents in Miles Turner, Jonathan Kuminga, and Josh Giddey, I think all of these guys are going to get retained by their own teams. Although Miles Turner is going to get an expensive contract elsewhere after Naz Reid just reset the market with that $125 million deal, the Pacers have to try to keep this core together, even though they understand that they're not going to have Tyrese Halliburton next year. They're not going to be competing for an actual championship next year without Halliburton. The Pacers still have to find a way to keep Miles Turner, even if it means going into the luxury tax, and I think that's what's going to happen here. With Jonathan Kuminga, there's always been the rumors that they're going to move off of him. Obviously, Steve Kerr and Jonathan Kuminga really have never seen eye to eye, but Kuminga, at such a young age, I still think has promise as a, bench scorer in this league when given the right opportunities, and he is a restricted free agent. I think that they're going to match any salary that Jonathan Kuminga gets out on the open market. Then with Josh Giddey, I expect him to get somewhere from that 4 to 5 year, $150 million contract range like Jalen Suggs got last offseason from the Orlando Magic. This was a win-win trade when Alex Caruso went to the Thunder, helping lead them to an NBA championship, and Josh Giddey really having a resurgence in his career with the Chicago Bulls, and obviously was a fantastic player in the back half of the season. I don't think Chicago wants to lose Josh Giddey. And for Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I think that he's going to end up with the Atlanta Hawks. They've had a terrific offseason, and landing Nickeil Alexander-Walker with that mid-level exception, which Atlanta has a $25.2 million mid-level exception, this would be a terrific fit. He already fits the offensive identity of what the Atlanta Hawks have, especially in a Quinn Snyder offense. And then the Hawks would look really scary going into the Eastern Conference next year. Trae Young, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Kristaps Porzingis, Onyeka Okongwu, Jalen Johnson, Zachary Risache, Dyson Daniels, they've got a very solid core, and I would expect that team in the Eastern Conference to make some noise. Now, DeAndre Ayton was released from the Portland Trailblazers last night after he got his contract bought out, and although it is a perfect fit, and we've all seen the rumors about DeAndre Ayton potentially going to the Los Angeles Lakers, I think that the Los Angeles Clippers are actually going to be the team that's going to swoop DeAndre Ayton up. He's going to be the perfect backup big to Zubac, and I actually think that the Clippers have way more promise going into next season with their current roster construction than the Lakers do, especially with everything pending with potentially LeBron James, even though I assume he'll be back with the Lakers. So, DeAndre Ayton, I think he's going to be a Clipper. Now, I don't want to spend too much time going through this, so let me just kind of fly through and go down the list. Dorian Finney-Smith, he deserves a good contract. He obviously opted out of that $15.4 million player option. I think he's going to end up with the Chicago Bulls. Ty Jerome, one of the best ball handling shooters right now out on the open market. I think he's going to end up with the Clippers, as Norman Powell's now on the last year of his deal. Brook Lopez, the stretch five, I think he ends up with the Memphis Grizzlies, backing up or maybe even alongside Zach Edey. Al Horford, I think, goes back to the Oklahoma City Thunder, where he's going to go after another ring potentially. Next one being Quentin Grimes. I think he's going to go to the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn has a ton of cap space, has a ton of opportunity for Quentin Grimes to get as many touches as he'd like and to shoot the ball basically as much as he would like. I really like what they're doing over there in Brooklyn, despite the fact that Sean Marks just took 4 ball handlers in the first round of this year's draft. I think Quentin Grimes is going to end up with the Brooklyn Nets. And speaking of the Brooklyn Nets, I think that Cam Thomas, who's a restricted free agent, is going to end up back again with the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, it is hard to find a guy, even at his size, that can score 20 points on any given night. He's an absolute microwave and one of the best isolation scorers that we've seen in the game currently right now. Getting through these last few ones, I've got Tyus Jones to the Orlando Magic, and this is another team that has been rumored and linked to Tyus Jones for a handful of seasons. He's got that veteran point guard presence. He's obviously been on a bunch of very good teams with the Memphis Grizzlies, maybe not a great team with the Phoenix Suns, but he's got the experience. He has that championship level pedigree about him, the way that he carries himself, and I think that he'd be a terrific fit in Orlando. Next up, I've got Karis LeVert headed to the San Antonio Spurs. This is another opportunity where the rich get richer. The Spurs just continuously find a way to make good moves, and Karis LeVert is another one of them that I think that they make. And lastly, with Dennis Schroeder, I think he's going to end up with the New Orleans Pelicans. This is a team that has some good young talent. Obviously, guys like Jordan Poole, I guess if you consider him young. Obviously, they just drafted Jeremiah Fears and a handful of other players. They need somebody to man that position coming off of the bench, especially while DeJounte Murray is still recovering from his injury. I think you can get Dennis Schroeder on a buy low, good value contract, and I think that this would work in New Orleans. But that's officially going to wrap up my free agency predictions. We will see how the next 24 to 48 hours are going to pan out. I don't think anything can be officially official until July 6th, if I remember correctly, but as of right now, 6 p.m. Eastern, June 30th, teams can now begin negotiating with players that are not on their own teams, even if it is just verbal. Very excited for this free agency period. Let me know your guys' thoughts and predictions in the comments down below. If you guys appreciate all of the work and content that I do here, make sure you guys go ahead and drop me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe bell to stay tuned for more NBA and hoops talk that I do here on YouTube. And for more exclusive content, make sure you guys go ahead and follow me on my socials, especially on Twitter and Instagram. I will have all of the links to my socials in the description down below. But thank you guys again for watching, and as always, I'll catch y'all on the next one.